Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. We're the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable, carbon-neutral society. And I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanks for joining the conversation. Vertical farming, the emerging indoor approach to growing greens and other vegetables, has begun to transform agriculture. This food revolution is starting from the center of cities, where now unused industrial space is being converted to grow produce for local consumers. We're joined today by Marc Oshima. He's the co-founder and chief marketing officer at AeroFarms. Marc brought a career's worth of marketing experience at Toys R Us, L'Oreal, and Turner Broadcasting, amongst others, to develop a new approach to growing and selling fresh produce. AeroFarms offers a variety of greens, including arugula, wasabi mustard, kale, and other blends designed for surprising flavors. And their farming technology is reported to be 390 times more productive than growing produce on a traditional farm, and it uses 95% less water. AeroFarms is a certified B Corporation that works to create social and environmental benefits, not just a profit. They plan expansions to create local jobs, eliminate food scarcity and food deserts, and to build sustainable communities. The company has been recognized for its flavor spectrum philosophy. It's a labeling model that illustrates the taste profile of the greens that helps cooks create salads and meals with a specific flavor characteristic. The greens are available in low-impact packaging that uses recycled plastic at Whole Foods, Walmart, ShopRite, and other grocers, as well as for home delivery from Amazon Fresh and Fresh Direct. You can learn more about AeroFarms at www.aerofarms.com. Aero is spelled A-E-R-O, aerofarms.com. Welcome to the show, Marc. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having us. I'm happy to share the AeroFarms story.
Well, thank you for joining us. I wanted to start off, you established yourself as a leader in farming innovation, but your background's in marketing. What made growing and distributing produce an attractive career step?
Well, there are a few things. First, as a reminder, in order to do farming well, it takes a village. And so it takes expertise in a lot of different areas. So we have incredible plant scientists, growers, agronomists, as well as engineers, world-class operators, food safety. But the marketing part is a really important part of the equation in terms of understanding how to go to market, what products. And my background and passion has been on retail. I've headed the marketing for supermarket chains, for specialty food retailers, seeing firsthand the consumer's interest and connection with where their food's coming from, how it's prepared, how it's sourced, but more importantly, how is it grown. And so this was an opportunity in thinking about developing AeroFarms as one of the three co-founders and thinking about how do we think about a new way of farming, thinking about the macro pressures that we're seeing out there. But the idea was how to have an impact. And so my marketing career has always been built on launching new businesses, new form factors in terms of connecting with the consumer, understanding what's the right business model, and then be able to drive success around that.
Now, you founded the company in 2010. You've raised $238 million and developed relationships with many of the largest grocery companies in the United States. What were the biggest challenges along the way? Was it just getting people to understand the value of vertical farming, or is it more a matter of articulating just the flavor benefits?
Yeah, what's exciting at the end of the day is a better product where the flavor has been really its calling card right now. And we're known for having very differentiated product in the marketplace. We've seen tremendous growth. As you mentioned, we have tremendous partners. They're really the world leaders in terms of their different channels. So we work with Walmart, obviously the number one retailer in the world. We work with Whole Foods, the number one natural retailer. And so the idea that we can really think about a wide range of different customers and think about how do we help them? First, it's around a supply chain. The idea that today, traditional sourcing from field is really challenged more than ever. We see the macro pressures with climate change, with issues around access to water, loss of arable land. We think about food safety or the overuse of pesticides. Traditional field farming is more challenged than ever before. We need new paradigms. And what's exciting is the work we're doing here, not only in the US, but we have a presence now in the Middle East. So the idea that our technology, this idea of growing indoors all year round, can be adapted to environments is challenging as a desert. So it's exciting to think about a new way of farming here.
And in terms of developing the vertical farming technology, which is, there are a number of companies working on this. Who did you learn from? What were the major inspirations along the way?
Yeah, so we've been one of the pioneers in this space. And so we've had to really take a very different approach. Today, you do see a much more established industry, but when we first started, we were really the only one, and that gave us a different path of development, which we think still today is our hallmark and our strength, in that we had to develop our own technology. So all of our growing technology has been developed in-house. It's thinking first and foremost, what does the plant need? How do we optimize that? And then how do you commercialize that in terms of having the right kind of scale, the right kind of economics, and the right kind of throughput, and then the right kind of quality to be able to support the work here. Will be the first incredibly challenging to do. The idea that we're taking biology, harnessing it, trying to make it more normalized in terms of that growing, more consistent. We're leveraging technology in new ways here.
And tell us about the water use in particular. You've really reduced the amount of water that's necessary to grow produce. How do you do that? How does it work?
So the aero in AeroFarms refers to aeroponics. And so it's a type of hydroponics, but it's even more efficient. So we're able to grow with up to 95% less water than the field, but even 40% less in hydroponics. We're misting the roots directly. And that's really creating a really great growing process, both in terms of delivery of water, but also nutrients. It's also allowing us to use a fraction of the fertilizer that you would out in the field. So it's allowing us to be very judicious with their most precious resources. We think about today, 70% of fresh water goes to agriculture. And really 70% of the pollution of our fresh water, though, is coming from traditional field agriculture through the overuse of fertilizer and through the overuse of pesticides, dangerous systems of runoff. So fundamentally, we think about how to change that equation by using up to 95%. So it turns out, what the roots need, and this is all going back to the science and understanding of the plants, the roots need oxygen. And so by growing in air and by misting, we're actually creating a healthier biome, for the plants that allows us to actually grow in a more rapid method and get more biomass. So again, it goes back to how do you understand the right business model and right economics? And so today our commercial farms are using aeroponics for the leafy greens, and we've really proven that out.
Now, the other aspect of the company, which is intriguing, is that you're a B corporation from the very beginning. Why is the B corporation structure the right choice for a business today? Can you evangelize it for us?
Yeah, so this is really an important consideration for us when we were looking at, particularly in the industry of farming, where we felt like organic wasn't going far enough, was not really thinking about all the externalities, wasn't thinking about all the factors. And so even within the organic movement today, you see, the emergence now of regenerative agriculture, the idea that, again, how do you think about all the stakeholders? So for us, the B Corp was thinking not only about the environment, but societal factors. And it was really important to think about, again, holistically, when you think about going to market, how do you engage all these different stakeholders? So here with B Corp, we actually have a transparent scorecard on how we're doing against these measures. More importantly, it's being embraced by industry. So across, when we think about business being a force for good, we think about how to come up with a common language. So the largest food company in the world, Danone, is a certified B Corporation. So the idea that we can develop a common language and think about how do we think about these issues and challenges that we have in front of us and see how we're doing. So whether it's Patagonia, whether it's Method, whether it's a company like Danone or AeroFarms, but we're part of this bigger movement to think about transparency and then again the performance around that.
Well, the other aspect of this is you've embraced 12 of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as part of your mission. And that involves a lot of community engagement. So how do you engage with the communities where you do business to reduce poverty and make the community itself more sustainable?
Yeah, so
that conversation like.
Yeah, you're right. And again, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are another common framework in terms of, again, having a common language about how do we frame these issues and then collectively think about the right solutions. And so the work we do, and the one I'm probably most proud of within SDGs, is around the partnership and collaboration, what we're doing together. But it's very much community driven. The idea that we're making an impact where we have our farms, we're obviously hiring locally, we're driving year-round employment. That's very different when you think of the world of agriculture. We're thinking about fair wages, benefits. We're thinking about career development, for our team members. The fact is, some of our farms are putting right into food deserts and thinking about, again, how do we increase access to healthier food? But what's exciting about AeroFarms, besides our large-scale commercial farms, besides our large-scale R&D farms, we have community farms where we embed farms right into schools, community centers, housing projects as well. And so we have 15 of those right now throughout Newark, Jersey City. We just launched something in the Bronx as well. And we're in the process of extending that further. And we're putting the farms right into the community. So it's really hands-on, addressing that last mile, increasing that access, but creating amazing connections to food and how it's grown and getting people to really embrace healthy eating.
I happen to know about Newark's redevelopment through my relationship with Audible. Tell me what you're doing in Newark. Give us a specific example of what's going on there.
Yeah. So one of the things, first of all, Newark is home to where we have our global headquarters. We have over 100,000 square feet dedicated just to R&D. Incredible team, passionate around thinking around next generation crops and solutions. What Newark has been really special about, though, is in terms of we've had a working farm at one of the inner city schools, Phillips Academy Charter School, for 12 years now. So deep ties, and we're seeing the long-term impact and effect. And working with great partners like Audible, Newark Venture Partners, we think about Newark Responsible Business Council. There's a great community of thinking about how do we do things differently. We actually have one of our working community farms in the Audible dining facility as well, creating a connection with their team members as well. So we're looking to get everybody to be ambassadors around healthy eating and really think about the right tools to help get them engaged even further.
What's the economic model for a school-based vertical farm? Are you providing the produce directly to the students for their use, and is there an exchange of value there?
Yeah. I mean, it's a for-profit part of our business, but again, there's different returns and different focus in terms of, again, the economics there. What's exciting for the schools and partners is that really the operating costs are essentially covered by the harvest. And so, the product is going right into the menus, and whether it's the school or whether it's Audible's dining program. So the operating costs get offset in terms of those food costs from the harvest. So it's a really neat situation in terms of, again, first at the school level, it's about teaching STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. It's about teaching food literacy. These programs are geared to schools from kindergarten through high school. And the fact is, we know, and in fact, one of the community centers that we're in, there's a Head Start program. So the kids have access and visibility at an early age. That's how you create lifelong habits. And so the long-term impact is exciting to see as well.
If an organization is listening to this and they think, we have a situation that would be a great fit, how would they contact you to talk about the opportunity?
Yeah. So just reach out, info@aerofarms.com. I mean, we have a director of community farms that's very active. One of the exciting things that our community farm team manager is a science teacher formerly. So, again, there's curriculum that's tied into the programming as well. And there's a great opportunity both in terms of the schools, but even in ways for corporate. So one of our partners, Deloitte, is sponsoring some of the farms as well. So the idea that there's ways to partner and think about, again, how to extend these into broader areas of impact.
That's a great story. I want to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back to continue talking. Welcome back. Let's continue the discussion about vertical farming's role in a sustainable food supply with Marc Oshima, co-founder and chief marketing officer at AeroFarms. And of course, you can find their greens at Whole Foods, Walmart, and other grocers. Marc, you serve on a variety of boards in the produce and food distribution industry. Is big food, for lack of a better way of describing it, getting serious about environmental responsibility?
Yeah, big food is without question getting serious and has to deal with the business fundamentals, first in terms of consistency of supply. And so again, that resiliency of supply is absolutely necessary. So the sustainability of that can be looked at. COVID definitely put a big spotlight on the agility of our supply chain and understanding, where production is. Different regions, have even more pressure. So when we talk about that, we've developed a presence in the Middle East where they're importing over 90% of their food. We're talking about much bigger issues around food sovereignty, and food security. But here back in the U.S., thinking about without question, and the fact is, this is how we move industry, is the collaboration. How do we think about, we work closely, Walmart has this amazing gigaton project in terms of reducing emissions. So we try to partner very closely in terms of thinking about how do we align, the work we're doing and have a bigger impact, and working with major food companies is one of the ways. In addition to our commercial growing and the amazing retailers that we've highlighted, We're working with AB InBev, the largest beverage company in the world. We're working with Cargill, one of the largest agricultural companies in the world, on other crops, future crops. So we've actually grown hops for AB InBev and commercialized a beer last year under the Goose Island division. Because we think about hops in the traditional growing regions, the Pacific Northwest in particular here, it's more challenging than ever before. We had to come up with new language to talk about the heat. Who had heard of a heat dome, until last year, where all of a sudden now it's become more common sense. We're hearing about atmospheric pressures in California. They've had 13 record rains now, over flooding. So it's challenging, where we think about traditional growing. In terms of the work we're doing with Cargill, we're actually growing cacao. So cacao, and people should listen because that means chocolate, is one of the endangered species because very much so of the issues that we see with climate change and where the traditional growing areas are, it's getting too hot. And so the work we're doing with Cargill is not about necessarily commercially growing cacao, but we're looking at how to make a more resilient seedling that then can be transplanted out into the field that can actually be more resistant to that climate change. And so working with long-term, visionary partners like that allows us to, sort of realize, where we can have a bigger impact. And big ag, big food recognizes, they're only as good as their supply chain. And so everyone has taken notice. And it's the progressive companies that I think will understand on working on these long-term solutions with us.
As you talked about this, something came to mind. We talk about a terroir, the flavor quality of something grown in a particular region. You could literally tune something like a hop for particular flavors using your technology, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's what's exciting. AeroFarms today is known, particularly for the products we sell commercially, for its flavor profiles. And it's very much that ability to directly influence the growing process. The terroir that you mentioned, we can replicate that. We can understand, what's happening on the macro and the micronutrients that are going into, that plant, what makes up the composition of that soil, potentially in that particular area. We can understand that and then replicate that. And so the idea that we can actually hone in on that, then do it consistently every single crop all year round, right? That's quite differentiated. But then the idea that, we can actually take that further. So we can actually stress the plants in different ways. So we can make something sweeter, we can make something more bitter, we can make something more spicy. We can change the color based on how we stress the plants. We can even change the morphology. So we get the plants to stretch out based on if they need more light. So it's amazing. We develop these, codified growing algorithms that are developed for each of the different varieties that we've grown. We've grown over 550 different crops. And the idea that today, commercially growing, we think we can make money in about 30, but the idea that, again, it's not a technology limitation, it's just an opportunity for us to think about how do we create more breakthroughs.
That's fascinating. So that brings me back to the flavor philosophy, flavor spectrum philosophy that you've developed. You actually are thinking in terms of tuning your product over the course of the long term to a very predictable taste.
Yeah. So each one of our products that we've developed has a reason for being. So that there's very much a specific profile, both taste as well as mouthfeel. We're looking at, again, is it forward, is it finish, in terms of, again, the different notes. And what's exciting is that we're able to, work with top tastemakers, there's top chefs, top buyers on the development of this. And because of our rapid growing cycle, we can make it very iterative, very collaborative. And so we can do growing, take out some samples, get feedback, and then really take it back to our R&D team and continue to adjust. So it's a great collaboration between our sales, between operations, between our R&D, and then ultimately with our end consumer about how do we optimize the plants to get it to really create some delight.
That's a really interesting direction, one that I hadn't fully realized before we started talking. Now, the other question, as I listened to this, you mentioned that about 30 of the products are really profitable at this time. Can we migrate our agricultural sector to a net zero, particularly water usage, responsible water usage as well? And in what time frame, if we can even do it at all? What's your assessment of the opportunity?
Well, the urgency is there more than ever in terms of, again, what we're seeing in terms of the traditional growing and the challenges we have with the loss of arable land. We've lost over a third of our arable land in the last 40 years due to overdevelopment, due to overuse. We talk about the challenges with water, drought. I mean, these are everyday occurrences. So we need new solutions. And so we think we're part of that. We think that many of the crops, and we think about where we can add value. So some of it's going to be on the commercial growing. Some of it we can add value though. And when we talk about the partnership in our growing technology platform, we can add value. We're working on the next generation, for example, seeds for indoor growing. So today, seed breeders have really focused on outdoor in terms of the challenges. Is it mildew resistant? Is it drought resistant? Can it be hardened to withstand a very complex supply chain? Flavor, nutrient density is really low on the list. And so we can put that at the forefront in terms of, again, delivering a better quality product from that standpoint. But we're working, and this is an area where collaboration is important, where we've had to, think about, partnering closely with both public and private partnerships. So one of our initiatives that, we partner with USDA, but we also partner with the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. They have something called the PIP Consortium, Precision Indoor Plant Consortium. It's a multinational consortium where we're looking at next generation crops. So for leafy greens, AeroFarms is actually the principal investigator on these next generation plants and seeds that can then be utilized for indoor growing. And so these are long-term plans, but the idea is, again, we need to have things working in concert to be able to have these longer-term solutions in place.
Now, I've seen your facilities, and they're stacks of racked growing media. Could we do wheat or other typical field crops in this context? I've always wanted to ask somebody.
So, we see that not as a technology limitation, but, can there be, the right economic model, right? So, what we see is really probably a real nice blend between traditional field and again, this indoor growing that could be maybe commodity specific. But again, when we first started out, we said we would never grow a tree, but cacao is a tree, in fact, right? But we're growing it to a seedling, not to full maturity, to have that impact. Today, we're growing blueberries. It's a bush, right? The fact is with hops as well, another type. So the idea that, we can, and what's neat is that we adapt. So when you mentioned, those vertical beds stacked one on top of the other, it depends on the crop and variety. And so we adapt the technology to think about, again, how to create the optimal environment for the plants and be able to deliver the right kind of product performance.
Now, I want to turn to your product and packaging in specific. Just it's a topic we always talk about with folks. Now, you're still in the process of setting your ESG goals. Tell us about what you're working on. I know you can't make any commitments at this point, but what are the things you're thinking about?
Yeah. So one of the things that we think about, and we think about the circular economy. We were very involved with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation early on as well. We mentioned the Certified B Corporation, now the SDGs. So we think about science-based target initiatives as well is a key area for us to be able to understand the health and performance of our own business, and then be able to then measure and see the impact. So things that we think very specifically around, right? For example, when we talk about growing with up to 95% less water, that's one of the most critical inputs, right? When we think about the growing. The idea that we can grow in a fraction of the time, the fact that we can grow with what we're calling just-in-time growing, meaning we plant it for a specific selling partner in mind. It's not like you grow it, take it to the market, hope to sell it. We actually are driving so much more efficiency by having a very specific plan for a particular partner. That really today, our system is tremendously complex and has a lot of food waste. For the category of leafy greens, for example, packaged salads, 50% of packaged salads are actually thrown out at the consumer level because of spoilage. I think the consumer today has been trained to pick up the package and look for that one wet, slimy leaf already. That product has been washed. It's had to go through temperature changes. Our product is actually clean, doesn't need to be washed. There's no dirt to wash off, no chemicals to wash off. So there's inherent advantages to that. There's no cross-contamination issues as well that sometimes you can see. When you see something that says it's triple washed, that's really trying to mitigate some of that.
Right.
Washing is actually, it bruises the product and leads to more rapid decay as well. So our product, we have tremendous shelf life. But the fact is, because we're more efficient, there's loss along the way. When you take it all the way back, through that distribution channel from the home to the retailer, to the distributor, the processor, then to the farm, there's so much waste and spoilage along the way that it really is challenging. It's just a reminder, farming is difficult in and of itself, but more importantly, distribution is even more challenging, how to address that last mile too, and making sure that the product is held up.
Now, your packaging is interesting too. It is at least in part recyclable at this point. You can send the lid, the peel off lid, to TerraCycle through their zero waste box program, which is a paid program. Are you thinking about designing that package, the body of the package in particular, in addition to the lid that's currently recyclable, for recyclability? And how are you going to help consumers do that? How are you going to drive a circular economy in your package?
Yeah, our tray is recyclable, and so that's one aspect. And then we're also using it and sourcing it through post-recycled plastic. So the idea that it has a lower footprint inherent in that. The form factor, though, is really important, though, because it helps protect the product. And so the tray plus the film, and the film, by moving to a sealed tray with the film, we actually reduce the plastic footprint by 40% by removing the lid, right? So you often see a plastic lid as well. The film, though, allows us to have a modified atmosphere within the package itself that is calibrated for each of the different varieties, understanding the respiration rate, the oxygen transmission rate of that environment. So it helps with the shelf life. A traditional clamshell, plastic clamshell, is considered to be ambient, meaning room temperature and room factor. And so it doesn't afford the same level of precision to help you with that shelf life. So there's a lot of inherent advantages just inherent in that. So not having less spoilage, less shrink, the form factor is a big contributing factor to that as well.
Now, the layers in that lid appear, based on what you just said, to be varied because of the air passage quality. I'm not using the right technical terms here, but you just described something that's specially engineered for particular products. That's a type of differentiation that creates a lot of complexity in the recycling system. Have you thought about, or I guess the question is it time for the produce industry to put aside differentiating around packaging and adopt a standard approach to this, which may include you sharing some of those technologies with other companies?
Yeah. And there is an opportunity, and we have team members that are part of the Sustainability Council within the International Fresh Produce Association. We're part of something called the CEA Alliance, which is also trying to drive CEA controlled environment agriculture, collectively trying to come together with broader solutions. So we want to work collaboratively in thinking about, again, longer-term impact. New form factors like compostability, for the film, are only going to come about with greater desire from more people or more customers, and that will help drive the economics down. Today, it's quite expensive because it's not as widely utilized. But we think by coming together, we can actually create a bigger movement here. And that's what we're trying to do even with the TerraCycle, which is, again, gets other companies to embrace that, amplify the work that TerraCycle is doing, but also bring in other growers and other participants as well, so that there's just more awareness that there are options here.
Do you see an opportunity in response to the extended producer responsibility laws that are now in place in 4 states that deal with plastic packaging, for the industry to come together to start to design a collection and processing approach that can be deployed on a regional basis, so we can sort of close down our circular economies and keep the materials more local, so that there's less shipping involved? Is it time for us to rethink the reverse logistics that go with that complicated logistics of delivery that you just described a moment ago?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is a response to a need, and thinking about, again, how do we underwrite this? I think there's an important role for each of the different stakeholders. I think without question, the manufacturers have an opportunity here. I think government. One of the challenges we have today is within municipalities, there's so much differences in terms of the recyclability and then what services are offered and what's being underwritten. So I think there's a role from a policy standpoint in terms of a broader support, in terms of helping be a catalyst. And it's great to see what's happening in the state, but I think there's even an opportunity at the federal level to be able to create some standards and some opportunities. But without question, what we've seen is opportunity for companies to come together and be able to act more quickly. And that's exactly why we developed the CEA Alliance, was we could act and more quickly than the FDA, certainly around certain things around food safety and standards. And we see that certainly in terms of certifications or sustainability is another area of opportunity as well.
No, you've got a lot of things on the horizon big milestones, new potential products, and so forth. How can folks keep track of what AeroFarms is doing and follow your story?
Yeah, well, we encourage at AeroFarms in terms of all of our social media. One little fun fact, on LinkedIn, we're the most followed company in all of produce and agriculture in the world. And it really speaks to, capturing the imagination and the work that we're doing, but it also speaks to the power of the partnerships that we've had in terms of bringing people together. And so we encourage, follow us, on that LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and be able to be part of our journey as well.
Marc, thanks very much for telling us about AeroFarms today.
Thank you as well. Appreciate the opportunity.
We've been speaking with AeroFarms co-founder and chief marketing officer, Marc Oshima, and you can learn more about AeroFarms at aerofarms.com. AeroFarms is spelled AeroFarms, aerofarms.com. Rethinking urban space, which is seeing office and commercial occupancy drain away following the transition to more remote work, could include the integration of indoor farming in a variety of contexts, including schools, corporate and institutional facilities like the Audible Farm we heard about, or a hospital. And this introduces a new dimension of community engagement for business. In fact, it could become a natural feature of business development efforts. And the cultural influence of vertical farms, like Marc described, are important. Connecting kids to the food supply that feeds them at school is a powerful lever to help them encourage lifelong habits of environmental and social responsibility through participation. Just knowing where our food comes from changes our relationship with it. We also heard about the evolving discussion in the fresh produce and food packaging industries to enable a robust recycling, collection, and processing industry. Standardization of packaging is critical to make materials circular, and the local collection and processing of those materials could be a new source of local jobs and support reverse logistics solutions across many industries. Frankly, it's an exciting time to eat sustainably. We'll be following the AeroFarms story on an ongoing basis. I hope you'll take a moment to share this podcast or any of the more than 390 interviews we produced on sustainability in your ear. If you'd write a review on your favorite podcast platform, that will help your neighbors find us, and we will appreciate you folks being the amplifiers that spread more ideas to create less waste. Please tell your friends, family, and coworkers they can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the other fine purveyors of podcast goodness they prefer. Thank you, folks, for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Earth911. We'll be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself